Hi, and welcome to the Beyond Average Journeys of Growth and Increasing Value interview series. And I'm your host, Kristen Carlson. And today I'm joined with Adam Yormack, the epitome of a serial entrepreneur. So hold on to your seat here. He's the owner of Bronco Title and Escrow in Denver and Aspen, Colorado, chief legal officer and co-founder of On-Chain Listings, owner of Alligator Title and Escrow and Yormack Law, all in Florida. So welcome, Adam, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Coach Kristen. I appreciate it and looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you. So please just share a little bit about you and where you got started and how this exploded into multiple businesses for you.
Let's see. Well, it got started because I have trouble following direction, listening to others, probably a smat of ADHD and dyslexia. And I truly love to make my own schedule, kind of beat to my own drum. And I've known that since I was a kid. And I learned it the hard way in high school when, they were trying to beat the regiment into me. And I really blossomed once I got to college and then into the private world in law school, where I could just do my own thing and do it at my own pace, which tends to be very quick. And I like to focus on what I think is the most important, aspects. I truly like, dealing and working with people and solving problems and making money. And I feel that I'm the best person to do that for myself. And so getting out into the world and sort of being my own entrepreneur wasn't even an option. It's sort of my destiny. It was going to happen whether I wanted it or not.
Excellent. And so how did you start with one of these companies, or did you start them at similar times, or how did it grow?
So this podcast is about the entrepreneurial journey. And so, it started, I laugh, but I look back even to my kids now, you have things like, a lemonade stand, or you're going out and you're selling. We used to sell gift wrapping paper for the holidays, house to house. And I always enjoyed the sales piece of it. I enjoyed the sales piece of it. I enjoyed the hustle, the idea of it, the closing the sales, and then I enjoyed counting the money at the end of it. And I think a piece of that always stayed with me in everything that I do and everything that I want to do, is that I enjoy the process. And even though the process can be hard and it takes a lot of effort and it's not always the most glamorous, but the process gets you, at the end of the day, what you're looking for, which is, your sustenance and what you need to, build a life and a family and all those good things. I think the entrepreneur bug started there. Both of my parents were entrepreneurs. They both ran their own businesses. So I grew up in a home where, my parents were discussing taxes, finances, but also at the same time on the phone, off the phone, running in and out of meetings, leaving and going to things. So it was very entrepreneurial household. And I also got to see the ups and downs of that, when things were good and when things were not so good, when certain businesses disappeared. I think my entrepreneurial position that I'm in now, a big piece of that was actually seeing the journey that my parents went on, especially with the disruption of technology. Both their businesses were disrupted in ways that they could have never foreseen when they started, because that disruption just hadn't happened the way that it did. And then, their trials trying to sort of catch up with a world that was sort of outpacing them. And then after, even in college, I worked all the way through college in different jobs, everything from sales to waiting tables, and started a company. I worked for a real company for about a year and a half. And then I started a company out of that with a group of friends in the technology sector as their finance guy. And then, went on from there.
Awesome. So being in title and escrow, is on-chain listings one of those disruptors in the market? And is that how you got involved with that?
So, everything that I do is my sort of role in all of these companies is always sort of operations, vision, management, sort of day to day, and then also, the finance and the legal component. And so, after law school, I really focused, my background was finance. I'd focused on law school on business and finance. And that included a lot of, capital formation, SEC work, and all of that stuff. It was great. It was exciting. It was interesting. And I spent some time even litigating, white collar stuff in SEC issues out of DC. but it's also very time consuming, difficult work, especially if you have a young family. It's easier now, but then it was more focused. And about 6 years ago, my family, who is, are all real estate, really professionals out of either New York or they moved around, they started to come to Miami for the opportunities that were here as the city was sort of starting to grow, right? It had already been growing, but it wasn't like anything we'd seen before COVID. And just like anything, I had a business partner on the legal side, and I approached him and said, look, I see a huge opportunity in the title space here. We need to pivot, open up a title company, and we're going to have to, we really need to spend a lot of money here because we need to get it up and moving fast. And then we need to get in front of as many people as we can. And my vision of that prior to COVID was a fully digitized title practice, no paper, all digital. And this was because the state of Florida, and now the state of Florida wasn't the first, but a lot of other states have adopted this, was one of the first, was to allow online notarization, which means that you, instead of having to have a notary come to your house or having to sign documents in person, you have the option of doing it via just like this, like a Zoom with an ID. As long as you have a computer with a camera, you could pull it off. Now, the only thing that you still have to sign hard copy are the loan documents. Everything else can be signed electronically now. And what I wanted to bring to the market was this idea that we can be white glove service, but you don't necessarily need to come into an office and sign. We can send it to you on your yachts. We can have you sign at your penthouse. We can give it to you at your place of work or your vacation home. And sort of the idea was really go for this high end at first. And so we've gone lower down in the market as we've gotten more sophisticated and better, because that back office takes longer. But that was the idea. And so as far as I know, we were the first fully digitized title company in the state of Florida. And then we had a lot of people follow up on us once COVID started, because that was becoming more of the norm, but we were there first. So that opportunity so at that point, around the beginning of COVID, 3 or 4 years ago, I'm running Yormack Law and Alligator Title, doing real estate and corporate work out of the law firm and real estate work out of the title company. And I went back and I visited my hometown of Denver, and I realized that, more of my friends are not getting into, but like their real estate practices had started to blossom. They're doing really wonderfully. They're starting to build their own teams, and the connections that we've been making in our, from our 20s and 30s, we're really carrying over into our late 30s, early 40s. And so, just wanted to open up in Denver really so I could learn the Colorado market, because my goal is Aspen. I mean, that'd sort of be the crown of my cap, because I absolutely love the Rocky Mountains to death. It's my other favorite place to be, is between the Rocky Mountains and the beach. And so Aspen just seemed like a great spot to open up so that I could have a reason to go out there. And, during that journey, I was approached by an old friend who'd been working with on-chain listings, and they had struggled to put together the technology with the reality of closings and the legal components that go into real estate transactions. And even though they were working with a brilliant real estate operator and an ex-partner at one of the biggest firms down here, Greenberg Traurig and Rich Swerdlow, no one on the team had the nitty-gritty details of the closing process and the inside, and had automated the system. So I was a perfect fit. So we started working together, and we are working very, very hard to, I don't like the term disruption and disruptor. I think it's an old phrase, right? I do believe there are certain technologies that come across occasionally and sort of update the systems in ways that we weren't expecting. I think AI has done that. I don't think that's still disruptive. I think what it is it's another opportunity for those that are adopting technology to use the most cutting edge technology in a way that helps all of us. That's not disruptive to me. It just means that some people are going to not adopt it, and they're going to lose, positions because they haven't adapted. So I look at on-chain being very similar to that ideology, in that we are accelerating the pace in which the information that's necessary to close a transaction is so much faster and at your fingertips, that if those that don't want to or don't know how to adapt and catch up with us, choose not to, they'll eventually just be phased out of the closings, out of the system, out of the, competed out of the economy, because they're simply not doing what's available. Like we're not necessarily doing anything earth shattering, other than we're the only ones pulling all this together from a tech perspective and giving it to the clients, and other entities and companies just aren't pulling it off.
So how is that market going in Miami? I know that from a housing market perspective, things have maybe slowed down, but what are you seeing from your perspective?
Well, okay, markets slowed down because of, the rates going up, significantly over 2 years ago. But, Miami is a special place in the sense that, we are, as far as I remember, at least from the last data point I saw, us and Dubai are the two top top spots in the world right now for relocation places that people want to go, especially if they have money, right? You've got I think it's no income tax in Dubai. I think there's no income tax and no state tax in Dubai. And here you have no income tax. So there's a little more tax here, but you're still, in the United States. So it makes a lot of sense for people to still relocate here. And the amount of companies that have relocated here, everybody uses the example of Citadel, but it's a great example. They're the people that the quality and just the amazing talent that they're bringing with those people to Miami will be a game changer for the face of Miami for the next, 50, 100 years, as long as, of course, it's still here for whatever reason. But as long as we keep making the right decisions as a state and as a county and as a city, and you have to fight against that constantly, right? You're always fighting against poor decision-making, theoretical decisions, made with reasons that, don't make sense to me, that then hurt businesses. If you want a thriving market, you need to be in a place where the business environment for you to thrive is positive. And I think all those exist in Miami-Dade. And so while the market's slower here than it was, it's still faster and hotter than other places for the reasons I just mentioned. And in addition to that, that piece of the technology, which, I also sell it through my title company. So I actually just sell it as like another feature, another software feature that we can sell you sort of after you close. But if you've closed on a property and you own anything at all, if you own a property, if you own any parcel, you are our potential client. If you live in Miami-Dade and you own a piece of property, you're our potential client. So I think it's just a matter of this point of figuring out the price point that's going to be the most attractive and making sure that we're doing an exceptional job, and we need to do a much better job of communicating what the product is and why it's valuable to a homeowner, right? You have issues that come up with the properties and utility issues and things that don't get flagged or whatever, and you find out later. And we sometimes like to talk about the big issue, and which is if somebody steals your title and is able to get away with that. But the number of those occurrences are relatively small. So we have to figure out a way to, communicate it in a way that, yes, that does exist. But just like I'm not worried about a tsunami hitting me, though it could happen, we need to worry about all the other things that are more likely to happen and communicate that clearly. So, and again, that's somewhat of an entrepreneurial challenge, is like, it would be nice if somebody gave me the working system and said, hey, this works, go sell it this way. This is what it'll do, right? Which you do all the time. But nobody's going to hand it to you. So we have to keep figuring that out with iterations as we have conversations with potential clients until we get it right.
Right. It sounds like you have to do some education, right? So people understand the value of what you can provide.
Right.
So quick question. So on-chain listings can help with the transfer of a title, and also long-term, there's some type of subscription model to manage your property as you own it. Is that how it works?
Correct. So the title transfer component of it, right now, the title transfer piece is, we can transfer title on the back end, and then we can upload it we use Simplify right now to upload it to the county appraiser's office. And that would be a way of showing the world that, hey, you own this piece of property. because in effect, Florida is a first to file state, meaning that whoever first to record state, excuse me, meaning that whoever records the document first is the one who is going to have the mortgage first, is going to be first in line in case there's a foreclosure or something happens. So it's really important that in our system that it be recorded. We don't yet have, and we probably never will have control of that part of the system. That'll likely continue to be controlled by a city or state entity, right? So right now, Miami-Dade County, every one of the counties has its own appraiser. And every appraiser sort of has its own little fiefdom of how you have to file and do all this stuff. So it's and it's political and it's nasty and it doesn't make sense. And they don't speak to each other from a tech perspective. And one group might do something great. The other one doesn't want to do it because, Joe came up with it and Judy didn't, or Judy came up with it and Joe didn't. It's just kind of ridiculous. If you took all the great things that different county appraisers do across the country, you'd have like the most amazing system in the world. But we don't, because we don't like to share and everybody likes to be number one. So Miami-Dade's no different. And so they control all that information. So what we can do on the back end with our clients is we can sort of just help move that information around more quickly and then help them communicate that information to the central hub, which is Miami-Dade. Right now, we're only in Miami-Dade, so Miami-Dade County. But in addition to that, and what's more special about what we're doing is that because we're plugged in now to all of the different utility providers and also the cities themselves. So within Miami-Dade County, there's 34 cities. And so each one of those cities has fees and fines and costs, et cetera, that are associated with every property owners, right? They use it as a mechanism to, I don't want to say nickel and dime, but like make sure that they're getting what they need to get from a city's, perspective. And there are mistakes that are often made that either go unnoticed forever. And even when you close, they go unnoticed because you're not doing the calculation of what you were paying 10, 15 years ago on X, Y, or Z. You just know that your taxes are due here and you're going to make that payment. This system will allow us to sort of track all the different exports of where the money's going, where your dollar goes to the city and the county in both the municipality and the utility perspective. And, from a homeowner's perspective, that makes a lot of sense, right? If you can tell me on a daily basis or with a dashboard or some sort of update, sort of what's happening with that. And I'm not going to look at it. I wouldn't look at it every day, even if I had it. I don't look at my other dashboards. Like I don't look at Credit Karma until I get a notification on Credit Karma that something might have come up. And usually it's only been once that there was ever an issue. And every other time it's just verifying that, okay, this credit card was opened, or this balance went down, or this balance went up, or this balance was paid for, or this card was closed, and all those different notifications that you get. And what Credit Karma has done such a good job of too is sort of tying that all into different bank accounts and expanding that product service model based on that one item. And I think we're going to be, looking at something very similar, which is a tool to keep an eye on your local city, keep an eye on your municipality, right? And then keep an eye on your county so that you're not sort of babe in the woods, kind of wondering what the heck is going on with and why these things are, why you're charged for X, Y, or Z. And, there's 100 of examples that we know of from different clients, but I had one personally where, every 3 months you get one of these bills from WASA, which is our water and sewer. And I knew that I'd been using the sprinkler system. And I just thought that I was using, I turned it on for the first time once I bought the home. And I just thought I was using the sprinkler system in a way that was normal. But I was like, wow, this is like, the bill has exploded. This is so much water. I can't believe how much water is being used. And I do some research and I'm like, okay, maybe on a house this size, it makes it, but I make a couple of adjustments, try to, go from 35 minutes per water to 15 minutes per water. And then from every day to every other day. And 3 months later, I still get this like massive bill. But I'm super busy at the time and I'm just not even thinking about it. I'm like, maybe it lags. So then I go to like once every 3 days and I call my guy, Peter. I'm like, Peter, you got to come see what's going on because I think there might be a leak somewhere. 9 months in, lo and behold, there's a massive leak and I'm bleeding money. And, it would have been so much more useful to have been able to identify that as an anomaly rather than, 6 months in or 3 months in, rather than, hey, you just get a piece of paper and God willing, you open it or somebody doesn't toss it or you even give it 2 more looks. But, you're getting a document that doesn't necessarily like warn you that, hey, there's an issue here. It just sort of compares one data point to another, but it doesn't say like, hey, this data point is something you should be paying attention to.
Right. Wow.
That's really what we have to focus on, is getting that level of detail dialed in. And then I think from there, the title transfer is useful, but title transfer has always been as simple as you sign a document and I hand it to you. We have now transferred title. That's it. That's all it takes, right? The old style is, like on a deed, right? You pick up a deed, I sign it and give it to you, and now it's your property. Now, if I give the same deed to somebody else and sell it to 3 people, we don't know who owns it. That's why recording it is so important. What I think and where on chain gets interesting is down the road, if we're able to start to write our own title policies and ensure the transactions that we're doing with the data that we're pulling. And it's a big uphill battle because right now at the state level, all of the title insurers are promulgated at the exact same rate. So I have to pay as a consumer the same amount of money, whether I use a exceptional title company, and I don't just mean from the service that I get from the title company, I mean the actual title policy's ability to pay out, versus a mom and pop shop that, like, God forbid, they don't get 2 claims a year because they'll go broke and my title policy will be worth nothing. I have to pay the same for those 2 right now. It's the most uncompetitive, un-American, nonsensical system, because no other setup, except maybe for, like, if you have to pay for gas and our gas price here is set. I don't mean gas at the gas pump, like gas to your home. FPL is set. I mean, they're regulating it as if it were a utility, and it's not a utility. It should be the biggest and best, entity wins, and the ones that can't, pay their bills, or they're not able to pay for the policy if there's an issue, I should get a discount. If I want to take that risk and go with that provider, but I have to have it for my closing because the lender demands it, then I should have that option, but I don't have that option. Or, the lender should be, you can only use these 3 options, right? And they should do the due diligence, but that's not how it works right now. So that's the second barrier that needs to be broken for us to do the automatic, transfers, in which we would be able to sell the title policy along with it. And I think if we get to that point, which all of those things are getting eaten up, right? It's a bit of a long-term play. We're in a great position. So short-term subscription, long-term title transfer with insurability. And if we can get to break the loggerhead of the sort of the industry that doesn't want to see that change because they love the Palmer graded rate, then we'd be ripe to be we'd be a great discount option, because we can guarantee the same thing. Now we'd have to go get financing so we could actually fund any issues if we had them. But because of the way we're pulling the information, that information should theoretically be a lot. I mean, we'll need thousands of data points to figure that out, but theoretically be so much more secure that the likelihood of having a claim just drops dramatically. And it already has dropped dramatically. So we're just sort of improving a system that's already there that hasn't digitized yet.
So with managing so many businesses, I mean, how do you manage your work-life balance? It sounds like you have a lot going on your plate.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. One is, a few. Yeah. One is I adopted the rework position. And the reason I started Alligator Title earlier was because I'd sort of adopted the rework position where I was already starting to work from home. I was not tying myself to an office. I was doing a lot of work from home, even with my staff. And then so, from that experience, I also made sure that wherever my home was going to be, my office would be very close. Just this morning, I had a conversation with another attorney. We're talking about a matter, and he's, complaining that he's got to drive in. I'm saying, oh, your office is right across the street from mine. Where are you coming in from? He has an hour commute in and an hour commute back. And my first question to him was like, well, do you have kids? And he says, yes. And I said, I don't want to say, look, I feel so bad for you, but to wake up in the morning and do anything meaningful with the kids, in my opinion, right? Which is, I make them all breakfast every morning. I love making breakfast in the morning for them. I think it's the most, I don't want to say, everybody says, oh, it's the most important meal of the day. I really think that for kids, it is the most important meal of the day. and you have to start with packed with protein. So, really great eggs. Some we don't eat pork. So I give my kids this beef bacon that we get from Whole Foods, but like high quality food in the morning. And then my wife loves it when I make her a cup of coffee. So I think I've been making her the same cup of coffee for the last, 15 years now. And so I do that in the morning. From there, though, once they're launched and that time is mine, it's a very not super regimented day, but it's a very focused day in which I 9 times out of 10 am skipping lunch and going right until probably 6:30, sometimes 7. And then whatever needs to be done gets done later. And you also have to, now is a different conversation than it was years ago. So now it's really about delegating systems into people that already work. Years ago, and not that long ago in the distant future, was I used to joke that, friends of my brother and other people would say, how are you getting it all done? Similar question. And I would say to them, well, pulling an all-nighter once a week for 5 years in a row, you tend to get more done. And that's the reality, is like, when you take on these obligations as an entrepreneur and you say to yourself that this is going to be successful no matter what, and I'm going to accomplish this no matter what. And obviously it takes willpower to say that, but when you truly want it as bad as I wanted it and do want it and still want it, it's easy to say, okay, this has to get done today and it's due tomorrow and there's nothing I can do about it. So if I get to sleep, that's on me. If I don't, it's because you suck at doing it and you need to get better at not sucking at doing it. So the only way to do it is to do it. And so there was a lot of that. It's just really, really long days, long nights, and then trying to, micro date with the wife and the family and sort of do all these things. But, I don't get to do a lot of the other things. A lot of things go in the don't get to be done while I do all the things that get done for the business, but, hopefully it's all worth it.
Yeah. So are you teaching your kids about entrepreneurship? I mean, you said you grew up with that in your family.
Yes.
Are you also getting involved?
Yes. Once a week, I take each one of my kids out separately. My littlest one's not yet there, but they each have a business meeting with me where we sit down. I take them to lunch or, or ice cream or something later, but whatever. We have like a little date, and they have a binder, and it's their business binder. And they start off with an idea, then we talk about execution, and then every week we have different little milestones that we're checking off. And it really is because I just want them to get used to doing sort of the first, 25 or 50 steps, so to speak. So with my daughter's company, we've gone through name identification, logos, incorporation, shown her, how to do all that, getting the documents together. And then we've put together like basically a budget for her, so she can understand. She wants to start doing designs and she wants to design shoes. So we purchased, my wife and I, we purchased shoes from, mass production type style, which she can practice on and get good at. And then a friend of mine, Tara Sutton, has this boutique of women's shoes. And she's going to be providing us the shoes where when they're ready to be drawn on officially, or I don't actually know how the process works, whether it becomes a label or whatever, to get them onto the shoe. She'll help us with that process. And so my daughter was 9 when we started that. She's 10 now, and she's starting to see it and understand it and get it. And she's getting, excited about it. And then my son, who is obsessed with history, brags about how he reads 2 books a day. Tell him that his books need to be harder if he's reading 2 books a day. He wants to, he's also, my deal with it, my kids, is like, you're not allowed to watch, you're not really allowed on social media, occasional stuff on mine, they'll be able to scroll through, but you're not allowed to watch or participate in social media unless you're contributing to it positively. So my message with him was like, you can't watch YouTube. Doesn't matter if it's YouTube Kids or whatever. You can't watch YouTube unless you're contributing to YouTube. And so his contribution to YouTube is his own history channel, where he reviews and talks about all the history books he's reading. And I make him go through the process of setting up all the equipment, preparing for the sort of the speech, even though he doesn't do a great job preparing because he's 8. So it tends to be more of a question and answer. And then, YouTube has a mechanism where you can sort of just keep it to the family and only those who are invited privately. So, it's like 50 people watching it right now. And I think only 2 of them ever watch it, probably me and him, just to see how it goes. But just this idea that he's getting used to all of that is what I'm trying to foster. And the idea too, that every week you just have to keep building, setting milestones. And, you should feel proud of yourself when you've accomplished those milestones. But you should remember that after every milestone, there are more milestones. Like, they never stop. So don't ever get comfortable. Don't ever get complacent. Like, this is it until, the day you're 6 feet under. Like, this is the race we're on. And, in my world, there's no retirement. There's no day that it ends. There's no lying down on the beach with a margarita. Those are parts of the fun of doing what I do, but it's never the end goal to get to something, to have something, to whatever that is. Like, I try not to even think about it. I try just to appreciate what I have now and not get lost in either what I don't have or what I could have. Because, like, I don't know, what's the point? Just, enjoy the journey.
Adam, there are so many nuggets there for entrepreneurs. Any last advice you would give to an aspiring entrepreneur?
Yes. From my mistakes, try to build a team around you of advisor types that are older than you, that are more experienced than you, that have the life knowledge and experience of where you're going next. So for me at 40, it's those above 40. For me at 30, it was just above 30, but it's not just an age thing. It really is like an experience, but I think it's critical and would have saved me God knows how much time, and who knows where I'd be, if I'd done it differently. But if I had curated that a little more tightly and really made myself and forced myself to have the hard conversations on whether this idea was going to work and how, I would have saved a lot of time, effort, and energy, plus probably been connected to other people in really positive ways. So I think finding that community, if you will, that little tribe to help you on that journey is critically important.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And I look forward to everyone joining us on our next episode.
Thanks for having me.